All right, and being that it's a special meeting, we'll just go right into, let's approve our agenda. I just don't see that on here, and I want to be able to do that at least. So move, thank you, trustee Millerick. And a second by trustee Mack. All those in favor? Great, 7-0, thank you. All right, so we have 2 staff reports this evening. The first one is a Measure G bond update. The second one will be education workforce housing update. If the first one finishes before 6, we'll take a little break because we're thinking maybe somebody might show up just at 6 just for the housing. And so we kind of want to stay within our timeframes on the agenda. Okay, but we'll decide that once we get going here. And I will turn this over to Josh. Actually, let me just read this notice first before the people. We want to note that this meeting is being broadcasted on NUSD's YouTube channel at the direction of the board. The broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. There we go. Thank you.
All right, good evening, trustees. Today we have it's a view, right? Slideshow and from the beginning. There we go. Today we have an update on Measure G bond. I'm going to be presenting to you today. Let's get right into it. So starting, when was the last update that you all had? That was on October 18th, 2022, and then a follow-up as a financial update on January 31st, 2023. You received program updates, and then the board also provided staff with direction on where we were going to go with the projects that we are basically undertaking throughout the summer and into this year so far. The funds and allocation levels that are not expended were considered committed under each project. And after the completion of each project, all of those allocations have to kind of be scooped back in. So in other words, if we'll use easy numbers, if you had a $10,000 project and you only spent $8,000, well then $2,000 has to come back into the ending fund balance, which then is able to be allocated back out. An example of that most recently was at Hill, right? We had, it came in almost over $600,000 was returned to the pool of money. Some big changes that have happened, I wasn't here during the last time, and our bond manager, Andrew, who's sitting up here in the front. Both of us are new to NUSD as of the last time that you had an update on the Measure G bond. So let's talk about the projects, right? So here's an entire list of all of the projects that were completed prior to the 23-24 school year. Not a surprising list. It's a list we've seen before. What is sort of surprising to me is to see it all in a list. And then when you look through each one of these items, how big, how massive each one of these items is. There are very few things on this list that aren't big standout items. Including, like the STEM building and Center for the Arts are on here, right? It's just one little line, and then you go and see the magnificent building that we created using the Measure G funds. These are the current projects. Now, some of these might seem a little like, wait a second, didn't we finish that? We might have finished construction, but we're still waiting for finalization of the project. So we're still sort of in it, right? We still have some invoices that are meant to be paid. And so we're going to go through those right now. And these are the district-wide projects first. We have 2 district-wide projects, which is site security enhancements. And that was with the phase 1, 2, and 3 of the Ocularis and Verkada camera systems. We are now beginning phase 4 on that, which is to expand those Verkada cameras out to the middle and elementary schools. We also had the classroom furniture outfitting. While most of that furniture has already been delivered and is being utilized at the sites, there are still some that we are. Number one, we're doing a inventory system for accountability so that we can hopefully facilitate, we ordered, if you have 30 pieces of furniture for each classroom and you only have 28 kids, well, you don't want those extra 2 pieces of furniture because they're taking up room. But the big question was, well, where do we store them? And what if another site needs them? We didn't have an answer for that other than call M&O and they'll bring it over to you, which is a horrible answer. So we needed to come up with an actual system that Andrew has already taken on and has already begun. And we actually anticipate a relatively quick completion of that because we do have all the records. to do that work. These are some of the site-specific ones that we're working on. Now, the replacement windows at Olive, we went and toured, that building. It's all done. The actual construction work, we're just waiting. Again, most of these we're waiting for some DSA compliance documents to actually be able to stamp complete on the project. The kitchen, gym, and exterior finishing modernization at Sinaloa. The kitchen modernization at San Jose, air conditioning at Novato High and Lou Sutton, air conditioning at at Marin Oaks, and that one also had a roofing replacement. San Jose and Sinaloa both had their athletic field and track replacements, which are now open for our schools. They're not yet open for the public, but they are open to the schools to use, and we've heard excellent feedback from the students. And HVAC replacements at San Marin, Pleasant Valley, San Ramon, and Hamilton, which were approved at a recent board meeting. And then the Hill and Rancho painting and siding. Some upcoming projects. These are the ones that are in the pipeline already that were approved. Not the projects themselves, but the plan to do the projects at previous board meetings. We have San Marin High School's roofing replacement that goes with their HVAC upgrades. Loma Verde roof, Hamilton painting and siding, the Sinaloa sewer project, Olive sewer project, and Pleasant Valley sewer projects. Right now we are actually in the review phase for those to determine if it is actually necessary for us to do them. We're sending cameras down and making sure that those we don't want to spend money just because. We want to make sure that this is actually a necessary thing, obviously. So the age states that it's important, so now we need to make sure that the actual sewer systems are in need. And then we also have Novato High School's painting and siding, which will be a summer 24-25 project. And then there's also our Novato Charter School projects. So now we'll talk about the finance side of this. So finance snapshot here. The top chart, that we have there is all of the revenues that have come in. So this was past, the bond was first sold, the first staunch of it in 16-17. And so that was for $51 million. This also tracks the interest there. So by the time we are done, it was a $222 million bond with around $3.4 million in interest, giving us $225,593 by the time we were done. The expenses we've so far expended, that means sent the check for, $165,000. We have committed around 50.1, so those are the projects that we already have in the pipeline, which means we're going to be talking today about the district's recommendations for the balance of the funds of $10.1 million. That $10.1 million does not yet take into account any of the what I referred to before of the cleanup money. When we close all of those projects and we finalize them and say, hey, that money that was booked for that is not needed. The project's done. It doesn't take that into account yet. It also doesn't take into account interest for this year. So we should actually have more money than that by the time we're done. So the available discretionary funds here is what the board had approved back in January of 2023. The IT infrastructure had a holding budget of $1.4 million. There was a little bit left of the deferred maintenance holding budget. Deferred maintenance became $22.5 million, I believe, somewhere near there. There was $950 left in there. Elementary schools had $2.5 million left. Middle school, specifically, we're looking at Hamilton on that one, was $500,000. Discretionary available funds, so that was basically the no plan for this one. It's just sort of sitting in the ending fund balance, was $3.7 million. And the contingency or interest that hadn't been pulled from to fill a need in any of the other lines was $1.9 million. So we're currently reconciling and closing any of those old projects to update the dollar values that we have. And the reference to the project numbers on the left-hand side, that's just internal, that's for QSS. So when we go back and look at these reports, in the future, we know exactly what we're talking about, just in case the name changes. So what are our district priorities and what we are recommending for the uses of these remaining funds? So this is outside of any of the stuff that has already been approved or talked about in terms of our $22.5 million for the, now I blanked on the word all of a sudden, $22.5 million for the deferred maintenance items that we had to do, like the security camera phase 4 upgrade, all of those things. That's not what we're talking about here. This is just that $10.1 million. So the first one we're looking at is Hamilton Field. So Hamilton Field needs love. And we believe that we can resurface that one back to a grass field. We could not turn it into a field that would look like what we have now at San Jose and Sinaloa. The cost for that would be about $4.5 million. So we're looking at around $500,000 to be able to rid the field of all the gophers, moles, and voles, reseed the field, flatten the field, and it would have to be closed to traffic and students for a little while to be able to do that, to allow the grass to grow back. One of the big projects here is the elementary school playgrounds. Now, this came from both a safety assessment from need because of the age of the playgrounds, and at the elementary school we had $2.5 million sitting aside. And so we wanted to utilize that information that came in our safety assessment to create a tier list. Within that tier list, we wanted to look at one structure per site to get redone first, with the eventual goal that over the next 2 years or so, get all of them done, so that we have all new elementary school ones. Right now, some of our elementary school sites have between 4 and 5. And the real need on those sites is one for the TK through K grade, one for the 1st through 3rd grade, and one for 4th through 5th grade. So that would be an elimination of 1 or 2, and then a rebuilding, a replacement of 1. And the tier list that we would take is look at which one needs the replacement the most, whether it's the most in disrepair or it's one that had safety standards that are not there anymore, or they're the least inclusive, right? So we can look at it through many different lenses and try to replace whichever one has the most need first with one that is the most appropriate for what kids need today. The estimate is written there around $350,000 for the bigger ones, and then $150,000 for the smaller ones. That is just a very rough estimate. It's going to take into account a lot more things before we get there. But it would be about $2 million for the first run to get 1 done at each site. And then because we're talking about getting 3 done at each site, well, you double it and there's the other one. So it'd be about $6 million for the total project. $2 million for the first part, and then $4 million for the remaining. Right now, we're only kind of talking about the first $2 million. The $4 million would probably need to come from state reimbursement funds, which are not bond funds, but I will talk about at the end of this. Another need at the elementary school level is shade structures. Not all of the sites need them in the same way. We can say it that way, right? Some of them have big open areas. Some of them need it between buildings. Some of them need it in different ways. So the cost is a huge range here, because we can get $10,000 for something that simply looks like a big umbrella, and you can go up to very elaborate ones that are well above the $50,000 that we wrote down here. But we averaged around $10,000 to $50,000 for the ones that we were looking at that would be appropriate. So we need to identify the need, identify the type, size, placement for all those, but we believe it'll be around $250,000 by the time we are done. Yeah. And Sinaloa, they were left off of the HVAC replacement list because of the age of their HVAC system. When we were doing the deferred maintenance list, it ran through a 20-year window that ended in 24-25. Well, in 25-26, Sinaloa's HVAC now becomes 20 years old. So by the nature of how we cut the timeline, because you got to cut it at some point, it was not on that list. Well, we're getting there. So we do need to take that into account. So our recommendation would also be to do the same sort of project that we saw at San Jose and, well, really at all of our other sites. Sinaloa is the only one that got left out, is to put them into the deferred maintenance plan as well. The size and scope is estimated to be similar to the other schools of a similar size. It'll be about $2.5 million. Novato Charter School. Their current allocation right now for their for the projects that are bond related is about $1.3 million. Looking through the original planning documents, there's a lot of references to it originally being around $2.3 million. So our recommendation is to move $1 million from the discretionary funding to Novato Charter School so that they can address some of the needs that are in alignment with Charter's mission.
Related to the charter? Yes. Yeah, if you're fine with that, let's wait. Yeah, thank you.
There's two other pieces here that we don't really have a full plan for. There's a little bit more work that needs to go into them first. So I put them on the same page here. Those two key pieces is the IT infrastructure is currently holding a $1.45 million line item. So we need to make sure that this is the right amount for that, right? So we need to create the plan of how we're going to utilize it so that then we can know, is this sufficient? Do we need more? Or can we remove some and put it to a different project? There are still some funds left in the original IT, like the full line item for the IT infrastructure. So that comes into play as well. Then there's also the water filling stations at all of our sites. The machines themselves don't cost that much. The problem is the plumbing and construction. And some of our buildings are much older than other buildings, and that's really where this whole question comes in. So we're going to have to do a lot more research with some, plumbers and contractors to find out what that cost actually is, because any estimate is going to be wildly off when we start knocking down a piece of the wall to put in a water station. So we want to make sure that we're accurate before we sign off on it. So right now, the ending allocations for all of the projects that we said come out to leaving around $3.836 million in the bond fund. Again, this does not take into account money that we already know is available here, but it hasn't been scooped back. And then also any interest that we're collecting this year that we are estimating to be about $1.6 million for this year. So there will be additional funds in here at that time. The last piece of this here is the state reimbursement funds. These are funds that we received for upgrading and modernizing our campuses, most notably any of the HVAC or sewer work. The California government provides money back to school districts for doing that work. Current estimate right now is $15.5 million in reimbursements that we are eligible for. The interesting part about this process is that it has a 36-month review window, an audit review window. Until it is audited, it is not our money. So they send us the cash, and that's why I put in here cash received versus cash cleared. They send us the cash. We're allowed to earn interest on that cash. It sits in our bank account. But if we use it and they come back and say, oh, well, we estimated wrong by a zero, that's up to us to cover that difference. So really the idea is that we're going to need to plan for this for 24-25, the summer of 24-25 and beyond, because by then some of these will have already been audited. They will have been through that 3-year window, and hopefully California even speeds it up and we get all of them done. But we can start around then and have confidence that whatever plans we put in place that far out, we will know that we have the money secured and we're ready to go. And just to clarify, excuse me, one more time, these are eligible because we did these bond projects, but they are not bond themselves. They are separate fund. All right, any questions?
So we don't have to follow the bond language, is what you're saying, right?
Nope.
Okay. Just a couple logistics for the board. So this is a staff report. I know sometimes our conversation can lead to, we want to give direction, but that's not our goal tonight. We won't be giving staff we won't be taking a vote on anything. I think staff is just looking for consensus to see if they're headed in the right direction with the plan that they've put forward. You can ask obviously ask as many questions as you'd like. If the people in the audience would like to make a comment on anything, we'll have a comment period on each for the bond and for the housing. Fill out a blue card over at the table. We already are pink now tonight. And we'll give you each 3 minutes to speak when we go to the comment period, and the timer is off to your left. So please make sure you follow that. Stay within the 3 minutes, and we'll go from there. All right, so now we'll open it up to the board first to ask any questions, and I will start with Trustee Lametta. Oh, you're good? Okay. Trustee Gass, and then Trustee Millerick.
I have a question about the thing. So I was gonna ask for some stuff. So if we can, you just said
You want further information on something?
yeah, or I had
think
some
that's
other
okay. That's
stuff
totally
I was
fine.
gonna just, okay, so that's okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're not gonna take a vote on anything.
Right, I knew that, but it sounded like we weren't even supposed to give like direction. I don't get to tell you what to do, no. Okay, well, I can let somebody else go first. I have several things I wanted to ask. Somebody else? Oh,
Yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, well, the first thing, since you just covered the state reimbursement funds, I'm just wondering if there's anything on the horizon that we're looking at that we could actually apply for and capitalize on the amount of the money that we have now to further money back from the state.
Yeah, we work with a company called King Consulting, who is really like our guiding light through all of the noise that is all these different government-funded programs. They regularly stay in contact with us to apply for any that we are eligible for. So any of the new HVAC ones that we do, we will be applying for these same sort of programs for those.
Perfect. And actually, now that you're saying that, so the sewer work, if we end up having to do that, that's a potential where we could get some, like if it's $2 million that we spend, there's a potential that we can get money reimbursed by the state for that.
Yeah, it's a percentage though, so it's not 100%. So that's
no,
why
I
we wouldn't want to
figured
do it,
it's-
of course, unless we need to.
Right, I'm like even looking for like $10,000 and stuff. Okay, so then the other question I had, I kind of took a step back, and I appreciate, actually, I liked how you laid all this out. And I have my bond binders that I had to go through to refresh my mind about some things. And I like the direction, personally, where we're going, because I know we've highlighted the safety and the playground, play structures and things like that. When I went back to the original facilities master plan, which actually I was part of the facilities committee eons ago, I think it was 2015 maybe, I realized that sometimes because we couldn't do a lot of things, things kept falling off. You know, we made a lot of promises because we thought the money would go farther. And to note, I don't know if anyone has the number, but I think it's 510 million that we originally, like the first write-up. It's amazing that we've done as much as we did, but at the same time, we had identified $510 million of projects that needed to be done. So my question is, if the focus, we've been doing pretty well on safety, just making sure that we closed the loop, that we got ADA issues resolved. There was ADA issues identified. I know that we've corrected some like at PV, but just making sure that we have whatever compliance things. And I know you're still fairly new here, and there's a lot of material. There was some notations about food services things too. Just want to make sure our kitchens are okay. And then bathrooms. So not to want to add on to things, but I realized going back to where we started that those were kind of key things that I think function as safety and health, that we might want to just make sure we checked the boxes on the things that had come up. I think we did pretty well when I went through the list that was presented. And finally, and I won't take up any more time, is I brought an addendum that was done a while ago, and I'm not sure if you're able to update it, but it was fabulous. It was about the money expended in each year, what was closed, and it was sort of like the list you have, but it had the dollars assigned, and I think it might be helpful for the community to see it all laid out. If that's possible, I have copies that you can take a look at.
Absolutely.
Oh.
I will add just a little bit to that because you brought up fans. Fans just submitted and was approved by the state our plan for some kitchen upgrades. So there are some non-bond related, but it's paid through kitchen infrastructure upgrade money. Of course, this is not on the scale or the level of what we've done at Sinaloa and San Jose of a full remodel and full reconstruction, but definitely we can call them kitchen upgrades to our most needy facilities that we have. So there's some exciting stuff coming with that. Once we actually have some of the plans and documents in place, then of course the board is going to see them. So
Trustee Miller, and then Trustee Lametta.
A couple of points. Thank you very much. I like here's how much money we started with, here's how much money we spent it, here's how much money is in process, here's what we have to think about going forward. I thought it was a really clear, organized, easy for me to follow, even at the end of a long day. So thanks. On the last page, they're not numbered, state reimbursement funds. You pointed out that we're going to end up with about $15 million something.
as of today, yeah.
Right. And it's going to come over 36 months or in 36 months after it's approved. In the first bond measure that we did, we had exactly the same situation where when we finally filed the DSA paperwork and completed not just the building, but the actual process work with the state, that we earned those monies and they came in. But as that happened in this case, it would have been over 3 years, some of the air conditioning and other pieces of equipment that we thought were fine are now past the 20 years, and the deferred maintenance piece was growing at faster than the money was coming in. Most of that first bond money follow-on ended up going to deferred maintenance projects that we didn't even have our eye on. And now the district's in far better shape now than then. The conditions of the buildings are far better, but as you point out, that deferred maintenance is ongoing, and over the 30 years of bond funding that this district has received and spent, we've spent about $300 million. So we're spending at about $10 million a year to keep the buildings, to upgrade the buildings. So maybe we should have a plan for deferred maintenance to be putting in $5 million in order to keep the buildings current. So some of this and how we spend this money is going to be how you construct the deferred maintenance budget in our general fund. So this is just a point to you we'll be looking at that number when that comes forward, because it's going to affect how much comes out of general fund and how much comes out of bond.
Yes.
So thank you for that conversation. And then the other point I wanted to make, you talked the IT infrastructure holding budget and basically said we don't know enough to decide. And I think given the leadership change that we've seen, that's exactly the right answer. We need to let the team that's in charge of this area now get their feet underneath them and and inform all of us on what they think the issues are. So thank you for just leaving it alone. I think it's given where we are, a wise approach to that part of the problem. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Lametta, and then Trustee Mack.
Yeah, going back to page 14, elementary shade structure, it's getting harder. So I'm wondering if we need to increase the $250 or $250,000 for the shade structures. I'm just kind of wondering where you got your analysis, like the estimate.
So the estimate is super rough. It was basically what is the range of ones that are appropriate for elementary school.
Okay.
And they said, well, for the smaller ones around 10,000, for a pretty sizable one around 50,000. So, okay, great. Well, if I need a pretty sizable one at 5 of our elementary school campuses, there's your $250,000. We know that not all of our elementary school campuses need them. Some of them already have them. Some of them have play areas that are covered. But we do have at least 5 that need them.
Oh, okay.
If we were to embark on the project, the cost wouldn't be in scale to what the rest of our bond projects are, that's a pretty small one. So it wouldn't be a problem if that one went to 300,000 or,
okay.
325 or whatnot, for us to be able to ensure that we got the end goal of what we were trying to do, which is to provide the shade structures for kids to play under, right? The 250 wouldn't be the limit there.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee Mack?
First, I'd just like to make a point for the district overall and how we positioned ourselves financially with this bond. One, we borrowed at extremely low rates, and today we are earning at much higher rates. That's wonderful. That's what's driving these numbers. That's putting us in a great position. So I just want to, I mean, Yancey kind of had part of it, but you're of course part of it, and I want to just say thank you to NUSD for doing such a good job in managing that money. You know, sometimes luck is it's better to be lucky than good, but the market worked in our favor, and it's wonderful. In terms of the presentation, I agree with everyone else that this is a fantastic presentation. I really like the logical layout. You really walked me through it, and I just want to be a little rhetorical and just make sure I understand it correctly and kind of maybe re-emphasize some things to everybody. So as I work through this toward the bottom, we got 10 million, right, before we start, that's sitting there before additional interest, before the 15 million from the state, and before additional scoop-ins, or whatever you call them, coming back. So a lot more. I mean, that number could maybe triple if the 15 is.
I hope so, but
Okay.
I don't know about triple.
Well, I'm just saying, it's 10, then plus the 15, then plus the interest, then plus, anyway, but yeah, got it. And then when you take out all these estimates, and I want to also really commend you guys for taking a brave stab at some projects here and coming up with some very logical numbers. Like I can see how the shade structures, you're averaging 30 times 8, 240. Okay, we'll go with 250 as a starting point. And then, like you say, rough estimate. Appreciate that effort. And what I'm seeing is that now we go through all of this stuff, all of these new things that we didn't really have before, but we need, and it's wonderful that we're considering them and contributing more money to the charter school, and we end up at 3.8. We still have 3.8 left. And so it's really just, once again, being rhetorical, pointing that out. I think that's wonderful. We are fortunate that we're going to be able to have some money to make some decisions on and maybe do more than what we have on this list. So that's it. Thanks.
Anybody else? All right. Then we'll go to public comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we got some assessments of our playgrounds recently, and it was a really great conversation to have with the two of you, Josh and Superintendent Smith, around what our needs are there and how we can make them more inclusive. And the lens you're looking at it through is really great, and I'm glad it's here. So thank you.
Oops, I turned that off. I will turn it over to public comment. I have 3 cards. The first speaker will be Alicia. And Alicia, I am not going to say your last name because I will get it wrong. Thank you for being here. And then it'll be Genevieve. And then I have Michelle Greer.
You're here. I was just making sure. Good evening. My name is Alicia Incho Ogie. Thank you for not attempting that. That's a tough one. I'm a mother of 3, excuse me, ages 11, 7, and 5. My children attend elementary school here in Novato. I have 2 at Pleasant Valley and 1 at Hamilton. My oldest, who attends Hamilton, has a disability. I'm here this evening to comment on the need to update the playgrounds on the elementary school campuses here in Novato to make them inclusive to students with disabilities. Currently, not one of the play structures at any of the elementary school sites is inclusive. They might be ADA compliant, but they are not inclusive. You see, ADA compliance is really the bare minimum required by law. For example, playgrounds are required to have transfer stations. A transfer station is designed to enable a person using a wheelchair to transfer out of their chair onto the structure. And then, if their arms are strong enough, they can scoot up to the slide and go down. As you can imagine, that's very difficult. ADA law also regulates how many play activities are up high and how many are at ground level, which is why you often see steering wheels or something similar placed down at ground level so someone in a wheelchair can access that. Now, an inclusive playground is one that has an aim to not only make it accessible, but to encourage and enable children to engage with one another. I think we all focus a lot on how to include students with disabilities in the classroom, or at least we should, but what's often forgotten is the need to include these same students on the playground. The effects of play are seen in its cognitive, community, behavioral, and physical benefits. Playing alongside those of varying abilities increases empathy, improves cooperation, and creates a greater sense of belonging. I've been working with Olenka Villarreal, the founder of Magical Bridge Foundation, to bring an inclusive, more specifically a Magical Bridge playground to Marin County. In my work with her, she has shared that after building several Magical Bridge playgrounds in various cities in Santa Clara County, they are now moving forward with building Magical Bridge playgrounds on elementary school campuses. And they're incredible. If you haven't heard of these playgrounds, I encourage everyone to look them up. I brought some flyers for everyone. These playgrounds are for everyone. Imagine having a playground on your elementary school campuses that you know everyone can access and enjoy. Not just students with disabilities, but everyone. And now imagine that it costs roughly the same amount as the playgrounds we see on our campuses now, the same ones that so many students with disabilities can't access or enjoy. My request to you all is that you, as you embark on this plan to update your playgrounds, that you would engage with the necessary stakeholders to ensure that you're putting in play structures that every student in your district can access. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this what they're at Pioneer Park? Is this the? That's different. Different, okay, thank you. Thanks. All right, Genevieve, were you gonna speak? Do you? I'm just here to support. Oh, you are, okay, good, that's fine, all right. Michelle Greer.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Greer from Novato Charter School, parent of 4 there, along with the other parents from Novato Charter School. Just wanted to come and say thank you. I actually was informed that the revision was already assumed to be effective. I'm not sure. It's not clear to me if that's the case. Either way, I'm just going to assume and express gratitude for your consideration for our lovely school. I read on the wall, engage, inspire, empower, and I feel like we're really doing that there and across Novato. So I really appreciate you doing the due diligence and really taking time and care and increasing our allocation. It also occurs to me that it's not just for our students, but our teachers. As the shade structure conversation came up with Joshua's presentation, you know, our teachers actually carry out these big umbrellas. Our kindergarten teacher does, and I see her doing that every morning and every afternoon, and like the kindergartners all crowd underneath the, you know, the umbrellas. So if there's room to consider us for the shade structure, I'll put that on my Christmas list too. Otherwise, again, just thank you very much, and we very much appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, I will bring it back to the board. Is there anything else? I like the direction we're headed. The presentation you brought was very clear, so thank you very much for that. We've seen a lot of versions, so this was nice. I think, and the suggestions for the elementary were things that we had talked about in January, the play structures, the shade structures, the water filling stations. So those were mentioned in January in that presentation, so you're carrying it forward. So that's nice to see that. That hasn't really changed. And I think that is it for me. Yeah, so I think I'm in agreement with the direction that you've put forth. So anybody else? Abby?
Yeah, just a couple other comments, and I think that the shade structures and the water refill stations and the playground structure, those were all things that came from the schools. So we want to just remind us that like the sites were surveyed and these were requests that the school said were their priorities. I also am really glad to see the increase that we're able to provide more funding to the charter school. I mentioned last time we were able to visit, and it's such a lovely site, so I'm glad that we're able to really invest more at that site. And then to your point, Trustee Miller, when you talked about the deferred maintenance, I just wanted to comment again that that's something that you two have talked about, having a plan moving forward, and my understanding it's been sort of happenstance in the past. We're like, oh, we have this need, let's fill it in. And I know that I've heard you two speak much more about looking at our annual costs and making sure that we're appropriately allocating the funding for that. So just to kind of build on your question or concern, just to say that's something that we've heard you two talk about previously. And then the one last thing that I just want to mention with all of these things is to make sure that, you know, one of my priorities with this funding is school safety. And that shows up a couple times here, but, you know, as we continue to move forward and have conversations, you know, school safety is certainly a factor for many members of our community. It's come out in our surveys as well. I just want to make sure that that is something we're considering with this extra bond money.
Let me, I forgot to mention deferred maintenance for me personally, that if we have any additional funds, that we put some money into there, into that, pocket, to handle things, as just as the other trustees have said, to handle anything that pops up, so, and not let that get down to a zero balance in any way. Miller? And then Trustee
Quickly,
Gasson.
I thank you for recognizing the site security project. Everybody across this country has that on their mind, even if they don't remember to say it, and it's important that we remind the community that we're investing in making sure that the campuses are as safe as we can make them. And then the focus on the elementary facilities. Thank you for that. I think that's time for them to get recognized. I know we've done, in a couple of elementary schools, they've gotten significant upgrades. They're our oldest campuses, and those projects are completed, but everybody would like to see some improvements on their campus, and out of this bond program that the whole community supported, and we're doing that in this program. Thank you.
Trustee Gasson?
Just as we're closing this up, I can't help but just think in my head as we're talking about like these possible remnants. I mean, just to reiterate though, the reality is there's no other money coming in. So, we're doing the best that we can with what we have, but once that money's gone, there's, that's it. And I hate to put like a hard note on the end of it, but I'm so pleased that we're getting the interest and there's some potential, funding that we could do, but this is kind of where we're at now, to keep that in mind as we're spending these last dollars. So, but I think we've done a lot of great work.
Okay. All right, if there's no other further discussion, I think we will close this item. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we will take a little bit of a break, and because the next item's at 6 o'clock, and we want to make sure if somebody's coming specifically, I know we normally don't do that in a regular board meeting, but since we just have these two items, we want to wait till 6.
Interest in the item. Yep. Thank you. So we're going to reconvene at 6 or?
to engage, inspire, and empower our students. And because student learning is at the heart of what we do, we want to attract people who share our vision, who want to be here, and who want to work here for as long as possible. Unfortunately, it's becoming increasingly difficult to do because of the ongoing demographic changes on our country as baby boomers retire, and the fact that there's just fewer younger people going into education as a career, not to mention that most young people expect to work many different careers throughout their life as opposed to someone who might go into education and work for 25 or even 30 years. All this results in fewer workers and overall in an even smaller pool of individuals that are qualified to work in education. So let me get control of my mouse here. Well, actually, I'm going to go back, you guys. I'm jumping ahead. So I wanted to go on and say that, because employers are dealing with the same staffing shortages that we are, whether it's public or private, most are going about coming up with creative ways and incentives to attract people to their industry, which is creating competition for all workers and making it even more difficult for education. The state, all school districts, including Novato Unified, are taking steps to increase the number of people interested in a career education. Things like starting career pathways through high school into junior college, offering financial incentives, whether they be grant scholarships or even debt relief. But it's going to take time to get workers through that pipeline, so districts need to continue to create additional incentives to get employees who want to work in education. Specifically in Novato, commensurate with the cost of living in Marin, it makes other regions that are more affordable, more attractive to qualified employees. And for those who do choose to work here, many have to deal with long commute hours, which makes it very hard on them personally, and next to impossible for them to engage in after-school activities that promote the kind of connectivity we want with our students and community involvement. All of this ultimately leads to high turnover, which leads to disruption in our programs, loss of momentum, and inconsistency for our kids and families. We also need to address diversity amongst our staff. As we know, there's strong evidence that students of color, when they see people that look like them in positions of leadership, it helps them to learn and to do better. So when it comes to building education workforce housing, the question becomes not should we, but can we, and how? So let me start with a brief history. Starting back in 2008, some might recall that the Great Recession. The school district formed a Revenue Enhancement Advisory Committee, so we wouldn't only be looking at draconian cuts, but actually trying to come up with ideas that we can raise additional revenue. And the committee made several recommendations, one of which was to see what we could do to make better use of our land assets that would generate revenue. However, the amount of time it takes to develop land to generate revenue took so long at the time, we decided to make it more of a long-range, long-term goal. Through the years, the board continued to study the issue by reviewing land asset reports and presentations on what other districts were doing. Then in 2017, when the Marin Grand Jury reported on the lack of affordable housing, the board started up again by meeting with local housing professionals and community partners and other stakeholders, which eventually led in 2018 to us partnering with the city of Novato to do a preliminary feasibility study. At the time, we were proposing joint employee housing for the employees of both the city and the school district on the San Andreas property. We also did an employee survey at the time, bringing us into 2019. The board the board received a report on the city's housing feasibility study, and we directed staff to start the process of community engagement We got as far as a meeting with a presentation with the San Marin Homeowners Association. Unfortunately, shortly after that, the pandemic kicked in, and we were forced to postpone any further actions. Eventually, during the pandemic, the board did put out a request for proposal for the selection of a qualified housing developer we could partner with. We did select 2 developers at that time, but due to ongoing concerns around COVID and turnaround, again, we had to delay any action on it. That got us to 2022, when the opportunity presented itself for the Novato to participate in a special training that was put on by the California School Board Association on education, workforce, housing. Included several training sessions. And after the training, the board heard and approved recommendations from the team, which included hiring a point person to focus on housing. And in April of this year, the board approved a job description for Director of Staff Housing Development and the creation of an Education Workforce Housing Committee. So, timeline. So just a brief look at how the process goes. We are here at the very, very beginning in exploration. Essentially, there are 3 different stages in the timeline. Each stage essentially has 2 different phases, and it's very difficult to tell exactly how long each phase and each stage is going to take. But on average, and based on the experience of districts who have done similar things, it takes about 3 years to get to the point where you start construction. So we are at the exploration phase, and that's pretty much what we're going to be talking about as we get started. Make sure we don't go too far. All right, so where we are. We've hired a dedicated staff member. That would be me. And I'm happy to be here. And the staff member essentially oversees all aspects of the project. I'm dedicated to this project housing only. My job is to ensure continue momentum and to coordinate and prioritize the work that we're going to do in these early stages. Work is pretty much divided into 2 separate categories of land use and logistics. The land use logistics side is to get a handle on all of our existing properties, collect data on the district employees, and do a demographic study that we'll be comparing to employee trends on a statewide basis, so we can see where we are statistically when it comes to the difficulties we have with turnover, recruiting employees, and other issues around subsidized housing for a workforce. Again, just working to set the priorities on the early stages. The second part of the job is communication and community engagement, where we've already starting outreach and conducting meetings with internal and external personnel. We're doing my best to gather input from the people we work for and work with and those who live in the community, so that we can go to the next step, which is to form an education workforce committee. So to start with, this is a committee of the board, and its primary function is to serve as an opportunity to review information and to incorporate the voice of the community and our employees into the process, pretty much fostering a 2-way communication on research and the planning possibilities that we will be considering. The committee will eventually make a final recommendation to the Board of Trustees, which is the final decision-making body. The committee membership itself is designed to represent as many stakeholder groups as possible. It's board members, community members, parents, senior staff, and our bargaining units will be asked to send us representatives, as well as working with the superintendent, who will help identify those community and parent representatives to participate. Because it's a board committee, we will have to follow the Brown Act. And the public is welcome to attend, but we will record our agendas, reports, and presentations, and we'll be posting all those things on our website. And we already have 2 meetings scheduled for this committee, and we will theoretically meet quarterly after that if we need to. So where are we going? Again, basically 2 different parts that we're focusing on: communication and community engagement. We want to create awareness, want to provide as much information as we can about the need and how workforce housing might address those needs, and be available to answer as many questions as possible. We're going to cover the website on a future slide, and we kind of already talked about the housing committee and what it does. And then on the land use and logistics side, we will conduct an employee survey. One thing about employee surveys is we want to actually take that step when we get as close as possible to making a decision to proceed or not. We don't want to take a survey and then have it be 2 years old when we break ground. So, but at the same time, when we do take that survey, we're going to go back to our demographic study and the trends that we will keep a handle on statewide as far as how many people are going into education, where people are relocating, and what it is that we need to do to attract and retain the best possible employees. We'll have an ongoing presentations around that information itself, and then as things come up, we'll bring information to the board to evaluate and possibly give us some direction on how to proceed. Next is the housing webpage, and just encourage all of you to log on and read it when you get a chance. It describes what our goal is for housing and the difficulties we're facing. It explains why and how workforce housing is part of a broader district that the district is trying to attract and retain people. And I kind of mentioned before how we're developing pathways, trying to partner with other organizations that will help bring students in to education as a career and motivate people to want to work for school districts. So the other things that are on there is a direct link to the Human Resources Department. So essentially, if somebody catches the eye of our housing plans, they like Novato Unified, they have a direct link to apply for jobs through our Human Resources Department. And it also will include a timeline with regular updates. It'll have a frequently asked questions, some of the historical information that I've mentioned previously, and a direct link to contact the Director of Staff Housing. So that's where we're at, and we are eager to get your input, answer your questions, and get any public comment that we can, so we'll know how to go about forming this committee.
All right, I'm going to open this up to the board members. Any clarifying questions, comments? Trustee Miller?
Derek, thank you very much for putting this together. This is great. It gives us a roadmap. I do have a couple of things that I would like to suggest. To me, the most challenging part of this is to build a successful business model. So besides the relationship to the community, which I don't want to diminish, so I'm going to pretend I made that first. But the second issue is the successful operation, and we've had a chance to meet with a Novato manager and talk about how that works. We've had a chance to go to College of San Mateo and look at those. I'm interested in seeing early on in this process 5 or 6 examples of how this business would pencil out. What are we doing when we get to the end? How will this be working? If I'm going to build a chain of Sears Roebuck or something, I would like to know how it's going to be operationally functioning when I get to the end. And this looks a lot like community involvement meetings. There are many people in the Novato community and consultants we can bring in who have experience in building this kind of a business model and operation. And I'd like to get that group together and do some quick brainstorming so we know that, okay, we're gonna do one of the following 5 models or whatever the right number is. So we can start talking about how we're gonna end up. San Mateo, for example, teachers who come to work at San Mateo have a right to take advantage of workforce housing at, I think, 50% or some lower rate, but they have to agree to save the money they weren't spending towards the down payment, because at 5 years, they have to move out, and they're expected to buy in the San Mateo district so they can continue as an educator in the San Mateo district. Now, that's pretty summary. I don't have the details, but it would be like that. How is this thing gonna work when it is functioning? We have examples from Novato that are a different objective, but different model. So I'd like to see a group put together to get us a clear, on the back of an envelope, a business model that we're gonna be following to get this done. So that's in addition to all the community work you've already committed to do. So I just give you twice as much work if that helps.
Anybody else? Trustee Gasson and Trustee Mack.
Thanks, Derek, for the presentation, and also I forgot to mention earlier, thanks to both of you for putting the dates on the slide. I appreciate that. So just a couple of things I wanted to add in. I had the opportunity to go to the CSBA, one of the housing sessions, I guess maybe 2 weeks ago, and I did send out the link that CSBA has great information on their website, and then it links to some other things that I found extremely helpful in terms of what information they've been pulling in and the work that, I think was it, I'm going to say Berkeley, and it's not Berkeley. What's the university that they're working with?
San Mateo Community College, it could be.
I thought it was, well, anyway, they're doing a lot of.
Berkeley.
The Berkeley, yeah, okay.
Anyway,
So I thought that was helpful. The other thing that I think is a huge component for me, having been to an event recently with other City of Novato business people and stuff, was with Eric Lucan presenting the challenges for housing in Novato and how our project can support the needs of our community, but also in conjunction with the requirements that Novato is going to be having to actually implement in the coming years. So I think that's another positive that I think we need to kind of bring out there, is that it's a way to help us meet those numbers that we're trying to get to for the city. The other thing, the last meeting we had on our consent agenda, the developer fee report, and I think that other trustees got the questions I had asked, but I just want to relate that some of this work is being paid by that Fund 25, and so I think that's helpful for the community to understand that there's actual money that we are receiving from developers that needs to go to a certain purpose, for which this, my understanding is this meets that requirement. So those costs can be attributed to the Fund 25. And the final thing you mentioned about somewhere along the line about our staff and people who might have left, and I know that we've in the past done exit interviews, and just to see if we have that data point, if we've asked the question like, why are you leaving the district? Is there a company, if we can, how far back that data may go, or if we're still keeping it, I think that would be helpful. So, but overall, I'm just really hope that we can come up with something. I'm really looking, when I appreciate the timeline, because I came in 2018 in December, and I forget, one of those meetings was when they came and they talked about the success of paying everything off, and that they were then getting revenue, and the people were able to buy houses, and it was just such a positive thing. I was so excited, and then COVID hit. So happy to see how we can go forward on this, but just really want something that's going to support our community, our teachers, the kids, but also bring us revenue so that we can have a way to actually bring money in to then circle back into our schools and the kids.
Trustee Mack.
Be a little bit of a broken record, but this is the place to say it, so I'll say it. Time, right? This has been a long time. In fact, I think there's only 2 trustees that have lasted this whole process from the beginning. And then barely me, because I came in, in 2015, so saw the CSM, the stuff, and from that day on, that is the example that makes the most sense to me, because as you've heard me say multiple times, and I'm be a bit flip here, but I'm going to say I want to have my cake and eat it too. Meaning, I want us to be able to develop this property, whatever property it might be, but in such a way that doesn't just create housing, but also creates an income flow for us. Going back to the original point you make on that first point in the timeline. So I'm just pointing it out that is going to be my focus all the way through. I'm going to keep on pushing and pushing. I think we're all there anyway, but I'm going to keep on pushing that. The other thing I want to push, time. This has taken way too long. There's no need to point fingers, because what happened. You know, we had a pandemic. We had multiple turnover in superintendents. I mean, it's time, but it is time now. And so what I would ask is, with any things that we are going through, whenever we have a timeline, if we can put dates on it. I know you can't yet, and I appreciate that, but as soon as you can get dates on that timeline, even if they slip, I'd love to have them there so this group of 7 can hold ourselves accountable to those times. And regardless, I'm looking forward to participating however I can, even if I'm just going to sit there and watch the meetings, because this is very important to me, but also being 55-year resident of Novato, there's a lot to be said for what this can do for the city of Novato, not just the school district. And lastly, I'll just point out one thing with regard to AB5 and the city's requirements. I'm not entirely convinced that our units would count toward that, because they have tax implications and they're only available to school employees, if I recall correctly.
It's a
Yeah,
combination
we
of
need to sort that out.
Yeah, we'll know,
Okay,
and it will contribute.
okay,
Not all, but
okay.
most.
Okay, trustee Lametta, and then we'll do public comment.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. A couple questions. I know you made a good point about representation, about attracting new talent and people of color, because when a student sees themselves, be seen, right? They feel seen. So how are we engaging the Latinx population? I know you do a really great job. You're trying to create awareness, but just kind of trying to also understand if we're engaging that population as well.
That will be part of the process, and undoubtedly working through human resources, and the superintendent will be back to the board on developing a policy that addresses recruiting in that specific desire, want, need to get to be more diverse, et cetera. What the housing does is just basically gives us an opportunity to use housing as a way to recruit more teachers and employees of different backgrounds. So using that tool, if we decide to do it, we can use this tool to make that happen.
Okay, thank you. And then I see that we're going to conduct employee surveys and demographic study. When do you think we'll start doing that?
We're started.
Okay.
Tonight we basically just wanted kind of to lay it out at a very preliminary stage. We're trying to be as objective as possible going forward. A lot of the things that you guys are talking about, I feel like through the training and experience, I sort of have developed folders, and I've been meeting with people. We know for sure that we will bringing scenarios forward that have business numbers attached to them, and everything from funding and the requirements we'll have to meet as far as RENA, or how many units have to be designated for this or that. So we will have that information coming forward, but what we need is this committee so that we can run it through them and get some feedback and make them part of the process. For instance, we may take the group on a tour, take a look at what others have done.
And one last comment. So I see your committee membership, and I really appreciate that we have the NFT representatives and the CSEA representatives. But I would also encourage us to think about maybe having teacher that, rents or has an apart, like, or has, had issues living here to get their ideas. Cause a good portion, or I don't have the statistics, but a lot of people have owned their own homes. And so it would just be kind of nice to get their perspective. That way we know what we know what to expect or the needs of, their experience. And also maybe having more community members, because if we're going to construct in a neighborhood, we want to engage like the community voice, because sometimes when we talk about affordable housing in Marin County, it becomes a really big issue. So it's like, how do we bring them with us, and how do we encourage them to share our messages to their neighbors? So just a thought.
So this number right here is our number to pick and choose and decide on. So there's no, I don't want you guys to think that we can limit it here. At some point, committees can be unruly at 33 or some large number like that. But the things that you're talking about, our intention would be to discuss with the bargaining units that it would be optimal to have representatives that were experiencing housing difficulties and things along those lines, as opposed to a homeowner with a household income above $250,000 a year.
Just
That
want to
wouldn't be
make
very-
sure I put it out
Right,
there.
so, and I think they understand that, and they've already kind of communicated it, so they think that that'll happen. As far as the expanding of the committee, say so. And I think we can accommodate that.
Thank you.
Trustee Pickus?
Can I just build on something
Yes,
that Trustee Lametta
yeah.
said? I appreciate your comment about, if part of our goal is to recruit more staff of color, I would be really interested from a district perspective to see what is the plan. I think a lot of districts want to do that, and they're like, I hope we do. But I've seen a lot of intentionality from your leadership, and would really love, as we roll this out, is not just to see the housing plan, but the recruiting plan as well, to make sure that what we actually want this to be, it actually becomes.
Going to go to public comment, and then we'll come back to the board, obviously. So I have 3 public comment cards: Dale Klein, Jeff Schenkel, and Mike Jolly. So Dale, you're up first. Welcome.
Rumor has it. It's great to be back here in front of you. It's been a few years since I've been in a school board meeting. My history with this district is 25 years now of being involved. In fact, some of these, the Measure M, I was on the organizing committee of that. So it was wonderful to listen to what's happened and how much you've done and what great shepherds you've been of the public's money and trust in that. It's incredible. I'm very excited about this particular project because it's been discussed here. It's been talked about endlessly for decades. And finally, this group came forward, found the money to be able to hire somebody to try and push it through. Long overdue, and I'm just thankful it's actually happening. You're from my perspective, one of your number one priorities, other than safety and educating our children, is to utilize our resources to be able to accomplish those 2 things. And we have this piece of property, a couple of pieces of property, but one in particular that's been sitting there underutilized and non-utilized, which has actually in some cases been a blight to the community it's in. So here we have an opportunity to expand, to meet the district's needs, meet the city's needs, and move forward. Greg, I almost feel like you were mimicking my thoughts as you're sitting there. Those of you that know me, the economic responsibility element of it is incredibly important to me. We have this asset. Let's put it to work to create revenue for the district that can be used in the classroom, right? So that, in my mind, is one of the top priorities, and that benefits all of our children, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, that child in that seat at that school. I'm recently retired, so that's why I'm here again, and Derek reached out to ask if I would be a voice to help him with this project. More than happy to do so, and I'm available to any of you if the need should arise. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome to retirement. Jeff?
He still has to be Santa Claus, so pretty busy right now.
So Jeff Schenkel, some of you might remember me from Blue Ribbon and Measure A, and so thank you for, again, helping us get Measure A passed so resoundingly. That was really nice. And Ms. Tracy, it's good to meet you, I think, for the first time in person. Yeah, I wish I was retired. I have a number of jobs. One of them is working at a church. Our youth are scattered among 8 high schools in Marin and 7 middle schools, so I hear a lot about what's going on in the schools all around our county. My children are personally, I have twin boys at Rancho, and they're very happy there. And this is something that I have cared passionately about, is how do we attract and retain and keep good teachers here? This is something that fits another sort of passion of mine, is housing, and where these two kind of crises and emergencies come together. We have a housing crisis and a sort of emergency teacher shortage nationally, and what we're talking about here is a solution to both. It's interesting to me, when I was at a previous church in San Mateo, near College of San Mateo actually, there was a teacher I met at Carlmont High School in Belmont who commuted from Antioch every day. And we all have that reaction because that is not normal. That is completely unusual. And we all know that this is an expensive place to live. We all know, I know you would love to pay our teachers their societal value, not just what we can afford to. But this is the reality we live in. And people like that are uncommon. And when I meet the teachers in our district today and I see them, especially the good ones, I'm just thinking and worried, how do we keep you here? Particularly the younger ones, how do we keep you here? Because as passionate as they may be and as compassionate to our children and willing to sacrifice themselves as they may be, most of us, our compassion has limits. And so I know that I'm probably preaching to the choir on the need to get this done. As a church guy, I'm used to preaching to choirs. But I know part of the problem is, again, to your point, Greg, like time. And we need to actually do something and get something done. And it kind of boggles my mind that the idea of this could have even permeated in 2008. A child could have been born that year, and they will never see the benefit of what we're talking about before they graduate. Like, that's insane to me. And so they do. And so, Ross, to your point, you've hired somebody, light a fire under these two, and let's get this going as soon as we can. Let's beat 3 years. We shouldn't say, okay, well, the average is 3 years. Let's do better than that. So, and I would love to help as much as possible, too. So thank you for getting the ball rolling, and let's pick up some steam.
Mr. Jolly?
My name is Mike Jolly. Happy holidays to the board and to your new superintendent. It's nice to stand here and support Dale and Jeff and Derek in the portfolio you've given Derek. He's discussed it with me several times since you gave him the portfolio. It's an idea that I think is a win-win situation for the entire city. And I do hope, like Trustee Mack said, that it'll come through, reach fruition this time. I agree completely with Trustee Lametta when she made the point that it is so important. Right now you're in exploratory phase, 3 or 4 years when you have matured the process and you reach the possibility of, actually building units, that before that you will completely reach out fully, as I know you will, empathically and sensitively to the neighboring communities and make sure they understand that this is a win-win for them as well, and not something that's going to threaten or their property values or anything that they need to be worried about. Because for most people in our area, their home is their biggest asset. And so that's really important. And I know this board will do it. I know the district will do it with your new superintendent, whom I've had the pleasure to get to know recently, as well as Josh. Great choice. So North Rhine Water's already built in all of the state's required build-out, including in the area over by Ross's property. We've already built all of that in, including, I'm sure, whatever you put in this workforce situation to our future water needs. So there'll be no need to be worried about whether there's water. It's there, and it will be there. We've made sure of that. And the last point I'd like to make is something that's kind of dear to my heart, and I brought it up when I had the honor of being the chairman of your finance committee for the parcel tax in March. And that is, this country, our great country, is in the middle of the largest wealth transfer in the history of the world, going from my generation to my son and other people's generation. It is trillions of dollars. And Novato is a wealthy community, blessed with great benefits, and has shown itself to be remarkably generous to the district and to our children, as shown by the 83% vote for the parcel tax. And I hope we have the process in place where we can ask people to keep the district and the students in mind when they are distributing their wealth. I would have no problem asking anybody for the 7,500 students of this district to leave and give money in a great cause. There's not a better cause. So I wanted to point that out, and I'd be happy in any way to serve this district on those points. So thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, I'll bring it back to the board. Is there any other discussion or comments? Okay, seeing none. All right. No, Ross, no, that's
So, Mr. Jolly, thank you. The importance of the relationship to the community, either if you're a water board or a school board, matters greatly. And thank you for your suggestions and your volunteering to help in this activity. I think that's what you did, right? You volunteered?
Just one clarification, Derek, on page 8 of where we're going under the Workforce Housing Committee. I think this might have been an error because this is sort of the process we do in all of for our meetings. It says meetings can be watched online, recordings will be posted. I think that might be an error there, that typically our committees are not recorded and all of that. We do take the minutes and we'll post the minutes and it's open to the public, but the recording of the meeting and watching it online.
I think we should follow past practices, and I think that was probably in there as an added effort to add to the transparency and connectivity to the community on the issue. But I understand that there's resources required, and also there's some limits to how people are willing to participate when they know they're being recorded, et cetera. So I think we should follow the usual policy on how we handle special meetings.
The committee meeting,
and,
okay.
Special
Yeah.
committee meetings.
All right,
So
thank
we
you.
can change that.
Okay. And then the group that we worked with CSBA, the workshops that we went through, do we have access to those individuals to kind of use them in any way that we can? I mean,
Informally for now.
yeah, informally for now.
And
Okay.
as some of the members of the team know, and I can report out that CSBA received a second grant from the Jan Zuckerberg Initiative, so they are funding a second round of 1.0 trainees, so they'll have another cohort similar to the cohort that we
Right.
participated, and that they are also planning an advanced training that they want the same original cohort to come back and go through. Unfortunately, they had that all set up, and when the individual that was hired to do it decided not to, and so he's back to the drawing boards, and then he ran into the CSBA CEA convention and putting on those training sessions. So he's told me that he's back to trying to find that replacement,
Okay.
and so at some point I'll be coming back to that team with the superintendent's permission to either use that same team or establish a new one to participate at the higher level. So the answer to your question is that it's specifically designed to give us more access to those specialists and consultants.
Right.
Though informally, if you need to or would like to, I could, email them and try to get information from our previous instructors.
Yeah. I just think we should use it to our advantage if that's a possibility,
it's-
just for just for right now, as we're in the interim of.
Yeah, we're excited to have free
Yes,
expert advice.
that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah. So we'll have that.
All right, so we will, yes, absolutely.
So I just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I just want to thank Derek for being a part of our staff and for joining us. I want to commend the trustees for taking this on. Your enthusiasm and your dedication is palpable, and it's infectious. I have to admit, like in July, I was like, we're hiring what? And what are we doing? You know, and you all filled me in on all the history. Derek's passion and his knowledge, coupled with everything that you are experiencing and hoping for, has lit a fire under me to help make this happen and to support Derek with his work. And I also want to commend Leslie Benjamin for being a kind of an additional piece to our puzzle with helping with all the communication, which a lot of this is about communication, right? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How are we doing it? And we can't answer all those questions right now, but we're getting there. And so Leslie's a key piece. And Josh, with his financial brains and ways of thinking, is also extremely helpful in all of this. So I just wanted to make a closing remark from me and just thank the team and the community for the support as we move forward.
Yep, Trustee Gasson?
Thank you for making that train of thought for me. So what is the next step? So we've got this, we'll do the, am I jumping
Julie
again?
just passed me a note asking, let's find out what the next steps are.
Okay, I was so focused on this and so excited. I'm like, oh wait, what are we doing next? So what is that?
Well, we want to form the committee, so we'll probably get together tomorrow and take everything that we've heard tonight and come up with, I guess, a proposal and request back to you, and to see if we can get that approved as soon as possible so we can start on the recruiting process. And we'll cover the things that you guys brought up about who should we prefer to have, et cetera, expand it, that type of thing. That's the next step. And then once we have that committee going, all these other things will fall into place.
There should be some report back to this board, obviously, maybe like on a quarterly basis. I'm just throwing it out there, so something like that.
As often as you'd like, just let the superintendent know, and we will get you answers.
All right, everybody, you good, Abby? Yep. You look perplexed.
You can see the question in my
Yes.
head. I'm just wondering, you know, on our beautiful timeline here, we're in the exploration phase. Like, at what point do we hit the feasibility phase? You know, at what point do we say, like, yes, this is something we can do, we're ready to move? You know, if we're looking at our 3-year timeline, you know, how long are we in committee exploration phase before we say, yes, we're ready to move? Who are the experts who are going to take us from here to there?
Well, we're going to meet on, this committee is going to meet in February and then again in April, and I think we'll be coming out of those first 2 meetings with basically a, let's stop, it's not worth it, or I think we know what we're going to do, and then we'll be able to give you a better idea of how long things are going to take.
So hypothetically, by the end of the school year, we should have a stronger sense of whether or not this is a feasible move for Novato? Hypothetically.
Yes, I would like that to happen, but there are forces out there. I don't know what we may take into consider other things, but I am on the side of doing things as fast as possible. So certainly coming out of April, we'll give you another date. So if just tell us you want it done, some more information by the end of the.
I
I'll
would like
see
more
if I can get it
information by
done.
the end of the year.
Yeah.
As you know,
Work-
we're
well, work the lawyer to
hearing-
death and-
we're hearing the time, and I like the, you know, let's move on this. So great.
It's, you know, just one thing to keep in mind, it's just the more we do for ourselves, I think the farther and the more return we're going to get out of it. So keeping that in mind, we'll go as fast as we can.
Trustee Miller?
So I think there's 2 issues. One is, how does this actually operate when it's functioning, when we actually get, and there's the question of feasibility, separate from building it and having the property, is how are we gonna operate? And there are people in this community, Nova Road Partners and others who are running, and we can reach all over the state for examples of how that works, so we can look at it and say, yes, we can generate housing and kick off some outside revenue that can go back to the classroom, or we can't, but that has to do with how it operates. The other question is that has to happen simultaneously in my mind, is how do we get from here to there? How do we, what's the property we can use? What's the value of the property? How do we get it? What's the entitlement process, which, since it's school property, is something new and different because the rules have changed. So in my mind, there's really 2 threads that we should be following. How are we gonna run it when it's functioning? and how are we gonna get there? So I would hope that we see progress in both of those areas.
Anything?
Thank
on
you.
that? Yeah, I think just on how we got to meet Jefferson Union High School District. They're the most current to have a building up and running, and teachers are living there, and listening to their presentation in some way would help you understand how it is operated, how it runs. Yeah. Yeah, that's the most current one, I believe, okay.
If,
Is that on CB?
Hold up as where we're going. We hold it up as our objective.
Yeah.
As we hold it up as as where we're intending to go as part of some formal process, and say, this is the model we're building towards, so we can communicate it effectively to and measure ourselves against that, which I think Greg's point, you always want to measure yourself against some strategy. So you know you're making progress, you're not just running in circles. Not that this government agency would ever just run in circles.
so
All right,
I just want,
anything, yeah.
I'll just briefly add that there's going to be policy decisions that we're going to need you to make all along. We'll be bringing examples and scenarios, but when I leave it to Trustee Miller to jump to the end, but essentially we will be collecting and working on, and then when the time is right, we'll come to you to make decisions about how we're going to, what our policies will be on treating our employees and how we'll go about subsidizing housing.
All right. Jim, thank you for being here and just sitting and listening to the conversation. It's appreciated. I think it's important that you're here to just see how we're going. So, thank you. All right, I will adjourn this meeting. This meeting's adjourned.
Okay, thank you. See you guys soon.